Hey Pioneers, Dr. M here. Wanted to talk to you today about masks. Okay, a little bit about the science behind the coronavirus, a little bit about what happens when you wear or don't wear a mask, and finish up talking a little bit about classroom decorum and PPEs in class. So, I want to tell you first off, I've been following the coronavirus debate since it started last spring, even before we went on spring break last year. There's a lot of stuff out there. I've been trying to follow it. I've been trying to follow the science, the news reports, and all the various things that have come out about coronavirus. There are a number of key things that you need to keep in mind, and our understanding of this has been changing throughout. So you need to be careful what you hear. I'm going to try to give you the most honest assessment I have of where things are at on August 12th, 2020, about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Okay. First off, how do you get coronavirus? It is possible to pick it up from a surface. You touch a surface, if somebody has sneezed or coughed or even spoken over, there are going to be viral particles there. If they are infected, you will potentially transfer those to yourself if you touch your eyes, your nose, or your mouth. Okay, if you just touch your skin, it's probably going to stay there unless you later touch it again and go to your mouth. But that's the key thing. If you keep your hands off your face, you're not going to pick it up from the environment. And if you do, it's likely to be a very low dose. You're not likely to get the disease. If you do get it, it might be less severe. So don't worry too much about getting it from surfaces. Yes, clean surfaces off, particularly if you don't know who's been using them before. I'd advise wiping off your desk when you come to class, but you don't have to go crazy about cleaning things off. It is important to wash your hands multiple times a day. Dr. Root has been pushing that, and that's very important. When you wash your hands, you take any viruses you have picked up off your hands, and then if you touch your face, it's less of a concern. Okay, so don't worry too much about getting it from surfaces, but be careful. Okay, I try to go through buildings not touching handles and doorknobs and elevators. I tend to use my elbows a lot, my hips, whatever you can use to avoid touching with your fingertips, which are more likely to touch your face with. So you want to be careful about that. And again, wash. I generally, when I get back to my office, when I get into a classroom, when I get home, first thing I do is usually wash my hands. Okay, I try to avoid touching my face the rest of the time. Particularly the eyes, the nose, and the mouth. Again, I'm not very good at that. Okay, so those are things that I need to work on myself, but I think if you're careful, you can cut down on that avenue of transmission. That's largely within your control. Okay, the rest of the transmission, as best we can tell, is airborne. And it's of two types. I don't want to get too technical on this, although actually in grad school, some of my PhD dissertation was on this type of stuff, on filtration and that, and so I actually understand this stuff. It scares me. I can actually do the math on this, which is really scary. But just to make it as simple as possible, when you speak, when you talk, when you sing, when you breathe, you are expelling particles. Some of those particles, if you have COVID-19, are going to contain the virus. The particles come out in a wide range of sizes. You all know that, sometimes when you talk, you spit a little bit. Sometimes you see it fly through the air and land on somebody and go, I hope they didn't see that. But, it happens. That kind of stuff comes out. Those are big particles. They can carry a lot of virus, and you want to be particularly worried about those. Those are ones, if you're going to get COVID, those are ones most likely to do it. The good news is gravity has a strong effect on those, and they tend to fall out of the air at about 6 feet, which is why people have been stressing social distancing. That's important because it cuts down on what we think is a major route of transmission. But it's not the only airborne route. As you speak, as you sing, as you breathe, you're putting out particles into the atmosphere that are much smaller. You may have heard these called aerosols. These are very tiny particles. If you think about it, they are bigger than, say, perfume molecules, but they're in the same range as cigarette smoke. So if you've ever been around somebody, like you walk behind somebody, and you could smell cigarette smoke or you could smell their perfume, you've just walked through a plume of their aerosol. Conceivably, there could be virus in that. And I don't want you to worry too much about it because there's probably very, very little, particularly if you're outside. You're not going to get COVID from that. But if you get a lot of people packed into a small space, those kinds of particles are there in the air. They can get recirculated in an air conditioning system, particularly if it's not well set up. The college is doing everything they can to make sure our AC is going to be up to handling this, but frankly, in an old building, there's only so much you can do. And for purposes of this, all our buildings are pretty much old, even things like Ricky and the new library and that. The types of filters that you need to filter out viruses simply weren't around when those buildings were designed. But they're going to be doing a lot to bring in fresh air, to dilute the particles that might be floating in the air, because these aerosols, they can flow for a long time. In my classes, whenever possible, we're going to open up windows, and we're going to do whatever we can to keep people away from each other. That's the social distancing. The further away you are, the more fresh air you have, the less your chance of picking up coronavirus. We know there's a pretty good chance of getting it if you're up close to somebody and getting those big particles. What we don't know is how big a chance there is when you're at a distance. We know it can transfer that way. We just don't know how far, how long, things like that. So there's a lot of details out there that they're still working on, and we may change, I may be changing some of the advice I give you over the course of the semester. I know just this week, a couple studies have come out that have changed my thinking on a number of things. One of these studies you probably heard of because it was in the popular press, and that is the effectiveness of gaiters. When this thing first came out, I thought, oh great, this is fine. I've got gaiters. I'll just pull on the gaiter, and I'm all set. Well, this gaiter is just way too thin. Now, I realized that early on, and so what I would do is I would fold it up a couple times and pull it up, and that does better. I probably need a little bit more over my mouth here. That's better, but I would still advise against gaiters. And in fact, if you come to class with a gaiter on, I'm going to ask you to get a regular mask. Okay, we just don't want to take chances with these. The study that they did used gaiters that actually made conditions worse because they broke up the big particles and the little particles that could spread further. Even a good, well-constructed gaiter folded up in that probably is not going to be as effective as a mask. And the people around you don't know how many layers you have on of this thing. So they're going to be a little bit nervous. I'm going to be nervous. Please just don't wear a gaiter to class, okay? They're just not, really not going to be acceptable for us, okay? That said, if I'm outside or something and I'm not getting close to people, I might still use this. It helps. It's just not good in a classroom type setting. And again, when I do use it, I do double or triple it up or so, particularly over my mouth and nose. Okay? On campus, like we got like 100,000 of these things last year. You can get these on campus. People call them paper, but many of them actually have polypropylene in them, which is plastic. These things are actually really good. These are designed for use in medical environments where you don't want to contaminate somebody else. So these are best at protecting other people from you, which is what we're mainly after, although as you're going to see, a couple of these masks will actually do a fair amount towards protecting you. And of course, these just go on, loop over the nose. This one has a nice little metal clip in there. Make sure it's down on the side. If it's way out, it's not going to work effectively, okay? But you can get these relatively easily. I shouldn't be touching it so much, but you have to touch it a little bit when you're putting it on. After you've been wearing it for a while, when you take it off, you want to be a little bit careful about how you do that. Now again though, with these, if you are breathing out coronavirus, okay, you're not really worried about getting it on your hands or something because it's already inside you. What you're worried about is any particles that it's managed to catch. And again, that's going to be pretty low key. So, you'll see this stuff, long, complicated stuff about putting masks on, and taking them off and stuff. Don't worry too much about that. Make sure you wear the mask. That's the main thing. I generally try to take it off and then immediately wash my hands. They say these things can't be washed. I'm betting that they can be. How effective that's going to be, I don't know. So I advise getting rid of them. after using them once, like for a day. On the other hand, as an environmentalist, I really don't like the waste. Okay, so I'm going to be using reusable cloth masks, which have been shown to be relatively effective. Okay, so let's see, let's go to our cloth mask. So this is kind of a typical cloth mask that you might purchase. It shows up really good against the black, doesn't it? Features I like are a little piece of wire or metal up in the nose piece that helps hold it down. It helps cut down on fogging up your glasses. This one also has a filter inside. These filters here, they say PM 2.5. That refers to the size of particles they block. These particular ones have a charcoal filter in them, which will help cover up your bad breath, I suppose. Basically, it's additional layers. These masks are thick enough that if you hold them up to a relatively strong light, you can't see through them. I mean, it's lighter, you know, if you hold it up to a real strong light, you can see light through it, but you don't see actual beams of light coming through. That's a sign of a good mask. And it's made that much more effective when you tuck that filter in there. Okay, again, the filters that, you know, that's something that's going to be disposable, and how much material is in one of these versus one of these, I don't know. I am wearing these at least right now till we get a little bit better handle on what's going on. I'm trying to be very, very careful that I don't bring anything into you guys. And I'm saying that as someone who has been isolating since March. My wife and I have both been isolating. Neither of us has been in a restaurant in that time. I have not had my hair cut, as you can probably tell. You know, we have really, other than going out and doing the bare minimum shopping, I went to the eye doctor and dentist, and that has been pretty much it. So I've been staying away from any kind of settings where I could pick anything up, but still, I do not want to pass anything on to you. That's why I'm wearing the mask. I'm sticking something extra in it. It does make it hotter. It does make it harder to breathe. On that subject, though, I've been wearing this thing around town. I've been out walking the dog. I've mowed the lawn with it on a 90-degree day. I didn't die, okay? Collectively as a society, we need to suck it up, okay? There are some people out there for putting a mask on is a traumatic experience. There are very few people that medically can't do it. I talked to my allergist, who I've known all my life. We went to grade school together, and I asked him about masks and asthma. He says, oh yeah, it's a great idea because the mask cuts down on the chance of inhaling particles that could trigger asthma. He actually recommends and has been recommending that asthmatics wear masks. Okay, so you know, there's lots of people have all kinds of reasons for not wanting to wear a mask. I'm going to ask that if you are going to come to class without a mask, that you have spoken with Student Life, that you've gone through all the accommodation process, and that they've notified me before you show up in class without a mask. Okay, it's there to protect others. It's not about you, it's about protecting the other people in the class. Okay, so please don't come to class without a mask on unless you've been through that medical clearance, and you probably want to let me know in advance so that I don't call you out when you walk in without a mask. Hopefully that's not going to be anybody. And if you do come in without a mask, I assume you're going to be wearing a face shield or something else. I'm going to reserve right to put you wherever I think is best in the class, depending on ventilation and all that. And it may not be your preferred seat. I can tell you it's not going to be anywhere close to me. That's nothing personal, but again, I don't want to catch this. I don't want to spread it to anybody else. So a good mask. I've been buying these. They're coming down in price now. I get them about $2 a piece. I've got 5 of these stylish black ones, so I could wear a different one every day. I wash them out in the sink. You don't have to wash them out in super hot water. Soap and water, let them dry, let them sit for a day or two, and you're good to go. So like I said, I've got a bunch of these. Now one I'm going to caution you a little bit about. Some of them have, let's see if I can hold this up so you can see it. Some of them have a little, this up behind it, I don't know, not working too well, black on black on black. This thing has a valve on it, okay? This is an exhaust valve. Generally not a good idea. And when I got this, I thought, you know, I'm not certain I really wanted that valve on there. I didn't realize it was coming with one. And then I looked at it, and when I opened the thing up, I realized that the valve is fake. it's on top of all the other fabric. It's just glued on there. It doesn't really do anything. Now, there are the so-called N95 masks that you've heard about. Those filter out 95% of the particles, which is why they're so important for medical people who are working with people that they know have COVID. But you'll also notice that the medical grade ones do not have an exhaust valve. Okay, the exhaust valve is for somebody like a woodworker or somebody operating a concrete saw. They're only worried about breathing stuff in. They're not worried about breathing stuff out. And so in that case, having that exhaust valve on makes the mask easier to breathe, less likely to fog your glasses and stuff. It's great for that purpose. It does absolutely nothing for what we need it to do. It protects you pretty well, but it doesn't protect anybody else, and that's what we're about. So be careful about, if you've got one of these with the fake thing on it, I'm not going to come and take apart your mask to look and make sure it's a fake one. But with the N95 respirators in particular, if you've gotten a hold of one, I mean, I had a couple sitting at home from woodworking that, they're just not going to cut it in this type of environment. So you want to be a little bit careful about those valves on those. Don't buy one in particular that has a valve. But again, this is one that has a filter in it. The filter goes over where the valve is. The valve doesn't make any difference in the breathing. So I'm not too particularly concerned about this this mask, but it is something to pay attention to. Cloudy out there for a second, so I figured I'd turn on the lights here so you could see some of the masks a little bit better. There are lots of masks on the market. I bought a number of masks that were a little bit decorative, figuring have a little bit of fun. So you can come and you can get this guy here. Bonus points to the first person that emails me and tells me who that is. Now these masks are pretty flimsy, pretty cheap. I'm a little bit leery of them, I'll tell you that. But they are kind of fun. So, you can have some fun with these. This is Canyon's favorite. My other dog, Mesa, that he does not like it when I put this mask on. He freaks out. But there are masks like that. Those don't hold folders or anything. I've got filters. I've got this one here that a friend of mine designed, took the picture of. It's on a mayfly. So that's kind of cool. But that's you can get yourself a mask, have a little bit of fun with it. We're all going to be wearing them, so may as well get used to it. And of course, you can also support your favorite college or whatever. I don't have a Marietta College one yet. I did manage to pick this one up. So the masks, those are going to be important. Now, in labs, we are going to double things up a little bit, because in labs, we're not going to be able to get as much spacing as we would like. So in labs, we're also, in addition to the having a mask on all the time, we're also going to be asking you to wear a face shield most of the time, because you're going to be up close to somebody else. Now, face shields and any kind of eyewear are useful for a couple reasons. One is they break up that flow. They stop those big particles, force them to drop down. They don't do squat for the aerosols, but the big particles, they stop pretty effectively. They also stop stuff from getting into your eyes, which is why the medical professionals you see on TV, they're all wearing those. That's to protect their eyes from any aerosols or any droplets that are in the air. Now, to be honest, your glasses do a pretty good job of that. The way I approach this, I don't need to wear glasses. I just passed my eye exam at the BMV yesterday. I don't need glasses. I often wear them to class. I'm going to wear them whenever I'm in the building, because if somebody coughs or something out in the hallway and those particles are in the air, that will give me a little bit of protection. Okay, so I'm going to be wearing my glasses. If I wore contacts, I wouldn't be wearing contacts indoors. Those aren't going to give you much protection at all. So I'm going to wear my glasses a lot. And again, when I'm in a higher risk situation, I'm probably going to wear some kind of face shield. Not all face shields are created equal, but most of them are pretty good. We have the super cheap ones. These are ones that melt in your car, not in your mouth. You want to be careful about that. 3D printed, sheet of transparency paper. You can see they give a little bit of glare. It's not horribly uncomfortable. It's not it's hard to line things up when you're looking through the computer. Not horribly uncomfortable. it's going to break things up, but there's a lot of room for aerosol particles to come out. And you don't want to bang on them like that. I decided early on in this that type of thing wasn't going to be comfortable enough. I wanted something a little bit more substantial and that I could tilt up. So I got this, and this is a welder's type, and you can see it tilts up, so when I'm lecturing and my voice gets dry, I'll be able to get a drink in underneath there. And again, this is overkill. It's a little bit better. It doesn't fog and things like that. I'll probably be wearing this with a mask, maybe even when I'm lecturing. I haven't fully decided on that. I was planning on definitely using it before we knew about the aerosols. The aerosols changed the game a bit. This may not add as much protection as I thought it was going to add. You know, certainly a mask, any particles that came out, it was going to stop those any big particles. The small particles, though, they're just going to escape around the edge and circulate in the room. Towards that end, I found this one, which, as you can see, comes down around the side of the head and fits in a little bit more closely. Get it on right. It was really tough to adjust these things on the screen because everything's reversed. So in any event, this fits a little bit more closely around through here, and again will help trap some of those particles closer to me. The aerosol particles, while they can stay in the air, if they do settle, they tend to stay put. So if you slow them down and they drop out here, they'll remain on my clothes. I'll be often wearing a lab coat just so I don't take those home. And finally, for test days, I'm going to be wearing this bad boy, although I'll probably put a plastic shield in there. The nice thing about this is it protects me from thrown objects, and I can't hear the wails and screams of people taking the test. So this is another option. I've got to get the one, though, that has the work tunes built into it. Not in the main part of the video here. One is that if you are in lab, we are going to have the face masks for you. You don't have to provide them. I was just showing you some of the options in case you want to get your own for some reason. The other one was if anybody does come to class, if you manage to get across campus and you don't have the a good mask on, either no mask at all or you're wearing a neck gaiter, you got your t-shirt pulled up over your face or something, I do have an alternate with me. I will be bringing to class an alternate mask for you. These are very effective at protecting the other people in the class. They're not quite as good for you, so please remember your mask. That's the main thing I wanted to say about masks. I did want to say something else, though, about the times that we're in. Okay, the idea that I would make a video on wearing masks to school just kind of astounds me. I mean, what kind of times are we living in? And it's interesting. I think these are incredible times, actually. There's a real challenge here. You know, all your life, you've heard from your elders, so to speak, including people like me, about how terrible things were when they were a kid. Uphill both ways to school. When I was a kid, we didn't have masks. We had to take an old tube sock and wrap it around our face. You know, we didn't have good ventilation in school. And then somebody else would say, ventilation? We didn't have air in our school. We were so poor. We had to just go outside, get a deep breath, come back in and breathe out. And over the course of the year, we'd fill the school up with, you know how it goes. You've heard that all your life. When I was a kid, my parents grew up in the Depression and World War II, and that's what I heard about, the Depression and World War II. My grandparents lived through the last great pandemic. So I heard a lot about that stuff growing up, and my generation until now has not been faced with anything remotely similar. Your generation is living through this right now. You've got something that when you're talking to your grandkids, you're going to be boring them with stories about how you got through the great pandemic. It's a real challenge to us, and we can either rise up to it, or we can be snowflakes and just, you know, cry about what we have to do. And when you start thinking about that, one impression that I did get from my elders, I feel bad. I feel terrible for people who miss senior prom, junior prom, miss graduation. That's horrible. I mean, I get that completely. But I think of my dad. He graduated a year and 3 months early so he could enlist in the Navy. He missed his junior prom and his senior prom plus graduation and went into the Navy during World War II. My uncle Chuck, okay, my grandfather, his dad, was on the draft board, pulled out the number that sent his oldest son off to World War II in 1940, before the war really started for the United States. He was in until 1946. He was in the Army for 6 years. He got back, he had just enough time to get through college, and he got called up to Korea. Okay? Talk about putting your life on hold and things like that. Doing it for kids. I never heard my uncle, my dad, any of my uncles who were all in the service during World War II, never heard any of them complain about that. It was a life-changing experience, not always for the best, but they got through it. That was just the way they did things. That's the kind of spirit we need. You think about the pioneers that settled Marietta. I mean, the things they put up with, having to chop down the trees that they need to make their houses and stuff like that. They had a really tough time of it, and they grinned and bore it and did the best they can. That's what we're called on to do. We're all in this together. The only way we're going to stay on campus in person is if everybody does their part. And a little bit of cheerfulness will go a long way. We can get through this. So I need you when you come to class to have the masks on so I don't have to talk about this during class, because talking about it's going to put more particles in the air. I'm doing that here in the sanctity of my house so that you don't have to worry about it later on. I'm looking forward to seeing you guys in class. We're going to get through this semester. Hopefully we're going to have some fun. We're going to learn a lot about biology. So take care and enjoy the rest of the time before classes start. Be ready to get to work next week.